More Israeli hostages are expected to be released in the coming hours. Amongst those still in Gaza is 23-year-old Hersh Goldberg-Polin, who was abducted at the Supernova music festival. Hersh took refuge in a bomb shelter before being captured. A brief piece of footage emerged showing Hersh being loaded roughly onto a truck.
That's Hersh on the right with another hostage. His left hand and part of his arm is blown off. The bone sticks out. The other hostage appears wounded as well.
Rachel Goldberg is Hersh's mother. She's been an eloquent advocate for the hostages, including speaking at the UN. She joins me now from Jerusalem. Rachel Goldberg, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you for having me.
Rachel, we've just watched that piece of footage of your son Hersh being taken away. We know that he hid in a bomb shelter. Do you know what happened to him next?
We know that when he was in the bomb shelter, Hamas descended upon it. There were 29 young music lovers who had run to take refuge in that bomb shelter. Hamas came and threw in hand grenades, which many of them, a friend of Hersh's, was able to throw out many of those hand grenades, but 3 of them did get in and detonate. Then Hamas came in with an RPG, which they shot, and then they sprayed the room with machine gun fire. And after a few minutes of the dust settling, some gunmen came in, and 3 of the young men were slumped against the wall. Hersh was one of them, and they were ordered by gunpoint to stand up and come outside. Most of the young people in there were dead, but there were a few who were hidden under the dead bodies who gave us eyewitness accounts of the 3 young men standing up. That's when we heard that Hersh's arm had been blown off from the elbow down. And then Anderson Cooper from CNN subsequently ended up finding a GoPro camera that had footage from one of the terrorists who had dropped it. And that's how we got that video that you just shared.
Now, since that time, obviously your son has a terrible injury. Have you had any news about how he is?
So he was loaded onto that pickup truck, as you saw. His last cell phone signal was at 10:25 in the morning on October 7th, which was about an hour or so after that video was taken. And that's the last that anyone has heard or seen of Hersh in 53 days. We know nothing. The International Red Cross and all other humanitarian international aid organizations have failed to get in to see any of the hostages. So we and hundreds of other families who have elderly, there's a woman who's 87 years old who's there. There's a baby who's 9 months old who's there. None of us have any updates on our loved ones in the 53 days that they've been held.
So none of the hostages who've been released to date have been able to tell you anything about Hersh? Did any of them see or hear about him?
From what we understand, no.
Does that mean that you don't know who is holding him? Is it possible that he's being held by someone other than Hamas, Islamic Jihad, for example? Or is all of this completely unknown to you?
Well, from the video, what we understand is that he is being held by Hamas. But we also understand from these people who've been released that people were held in groups of 2 or 4, very small groups. There's a lot of chaos and pandemonium. People are being moved around all the time. So it's not so, out of the ordinary that these people haven't necessarily come across Hersh. But we really have, because there's no flow of information at all, we're, grasping at straws and not really certain of anything.
So as it stands, you don't even know whether he was treated?
Correct. We're hopeful. From what we understand, is that hostages alive are valuable. Hostages that are dead, it's not helpful. So it has been explained to us that ideally and hopefully Hersh and many, many, many other wounded or injured hostages were taken for care at one of the hospitals. There are many talented Gazan doctors who would have been able to give care. In Hersh's case specifically, the surgery that he would have needed to repair his arm is a surgery that can be done by a general surgeon. The bigger question is afterwards if he was able to receive heavy-duty antibiotics to prevent infection that could kill him.
And so the question, in fact, of supplies and aid getting into Gaza has a particular poignancy for you.
Well, we think that aid getting into Gaza has a particular poignancy for all of the innocent Gazan civilians who are suffering horribly, and also for all of the innocent citizens who are hostages who are suffering horribly. It would be nice for both of those populations to be receiving aid.
Now, we've seen you give a very powerful speech at the UN. You met the Pope, you've met other people. You've also spoken of the existential loneliness that you live with. How are you able to pass through each day?
Well, first of all, we're very busy, which helps. You know, we're running to the end of the earth. We're turning over every stone. We're throwing darts in every direction. We'll talk to anybody who could possibly be. There's no way to know who is going to be the person that can really help us. So we stay very busy, which is helpful. We have an incredible team of brilliant, savvy, kind people around us all day, every day, who help when we're having a moment where it's particularly excruciating to help carry us through. We're also people of faith. We are religious people. We pray every day. Throughout the day, I'm saying different psalms that give me a lot of strength to keep going when I feel like I can't. And sometimes when we have to just cry, we cry. And then we wipe our face and say, we have a job to do. We're on a mission. We want to save Hersh's life. We want to save all of those hostages, and we have to keep going. And so that's what we're doing. You know, these hostages are from 28 different countries. They are Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, and Buddhists. They span in age, as I mentioned before. There's an 87-year age range. I mean, this isn't sort of your standard, conflict, and there happen to be hostages. This is a global humanitarian catastrophe, what's happening with these people.
You spoke just now of your concern for the civilians of Gaza, and I've heard you say that you believe in dialogue as a way out of conflict. Do you mean that as an alternative to what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza?
Look, I'm not a politician and I'm not a military strategist. I'm a mother. I'm a mother with my only son gone, stolen from me. And in my life, the way that I have dealt with conflict, on a very micro level is through dialogue. And that's what's familiar to me. And I know that there are plenty of people on the other side who I think probably feel similarly. This cycle of violence and vengeance and revenge and more pain, we've seen it in our neck of the woods. We see it all over the world. Innocent people are always the ones who suffer the most. And I don't know that it ends up resolving anything because it's this rhythm, right? It's very familiar to us. It keeps happening again and again. So I definitely am a proponent for dialogue. But I'm also aware that I'm not, this isn't something that I'm an expert in geopolitical strategy and military strategies.
And just very briefly, you spoke to Joe Biden, I think. What was your sense briefly of his commitment to the release of the hostages?
Oh, I thought that President Biden and the entire administration and Congress in America has been excellent in terms of their sincerity and their dedication to trying to get American citizens home and truly all the hostages home. That is my impression, and that has been unwavering since the very beginning. And I hope, and there are other players who are also being really critical, helpful. Obviously there's on the Israeli side, Qatar has been outstanding in being tenacious and really being the glue that is holding this, this very fragile thread of deals together. And we are thankful for that.
Rachel Goldberg, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you hear news very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.